Love's Lament, a Valentine's horror story. Part 1, The Invitation. It was Valentine's Day, the day of love and romance, but for Sarah, it was a day she dreaded. Ever since her breakup with her ex, Mark, Valentine's Day had become a bitter reminder of heartbreak and loneliness. However, this year was different. This year, Sarah received an unexpected invitation. The invitation came in an ornate envelope, adorned with intricate designs of red roses and thorny vines. Inside, a single sheet of parchment paper held a cryptic message. Join us for a Valentine's Day celebration like no other. Love awaits you at the old mansion on the outskirts of town. Come alone and prepare to be swept away by passion. Confusion mingled with curiosity as Sarah read the invitation. Who could be behind such a mysterious invitation? Against her better judgment, Sarah found herself drawn to the promise of something different, something beyond her mundane existence. As dusk settled over the town, Sarah found herself standing before the looming silhouette of the old mansion. Its once grand facade now weathered and worn, with ivy creeping up its walls like grasping fingers. The air was heavy with anticipation as she approached the front door, the invitation clutched tightly in her hand. With a trembling hand, Sarah pushed open the creaking door and stepped inside. The interior was dimly lit, casting eerie shadows across the grand foyer. Candles flickered on tables adorned with wilted roses, their petals scattered like bloodstains on the floor. "Hello?" Sarah called out, her voice echoing through the empty halls. There was no response, only the sound of her own racing heartbeat. As she ventured further into the mansion, Sarah felt a chill creep down her spine. Something was not right about this place, but she couldn't turn back now. The promise of love and passion beckoned her deeper into the darkness. Upstairs, Sarah found herself in a dimly lit ballroom, its once opulent chandeliers now draped with cobwebs. In the center of the room stood a solitary figure, cloaked in shadows. "Welcome, Sarah," a voice whispered from the darkness. "You have been chosen to partake in a love like no other. Embrace it, and you shall never be alone again." Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as she approached the figure, her footsteps echoing in the silent room. But as she drew closer, she realized the truth too late. The figure before her was not human, but a grotesque creature with twisted features and empty eyes. With a blood-curdling scream, Sarah turned to flee, but it was already too late. The doors slammed shut behind her, trapping her in the darkness with the abomination before her. And so began Sarah's descent into a nightmare of love gone horribly wrong, as the true horror of the mansion's twisted secrets began to unravel. Part 2, The Pact. Sarah's pulse quickened as she stared into the soulless eyes of the creature before her. Panic clawed at her throat, threatening to suffocate her as she searched desperately for an escape route. But the doors remained sealed shut, imprisoning her in the ballroom with the sinister presence. "What do you want from me?" Sarah demanded, her voice quivering with fear. The creature chuckled, a sound that sent shivers down Sarah's spine. "I want to give you what you desire most," it replied, its voice a haunting melody that echoed through the room. Sarah recoiled, her mind racing with horror. How could this monstrous entity know her deepest desires? And what twisted version of love did it intend to bestow upon her? Before she could voice her protests, the creature reached out a gnarled hand, its fingers curling around Sarah's wrist like icy tendrils. "Do you long for love, Sarah?" it whispered, its breath hot against her skin. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as she struggled to break free from the creature's grip. "I don't want anything from you," she spat, her voice laced with defiance. But the creature's grip only tightened, its gaze piercing into her very soul. "You cannot deny the ache in your heart, Sarah," it hissed. "You long for love, for companionship. And I can give it to you, in exchange for a simple pact." A chill ran down Sarah's spine as she considered the creature's offer. Could she truly trust this abomination to fulfill her desires? Or was this just another trap, another nightmare from which she could never awaken? But as the minutes stretched on, and the shadows deepened around her, Sarah knew she had no choice. With a trembling hand, she reached out to the creature, sealing her fate in a pact of darkness. And so, As the moon rose high in the sky and the echoes of her screams faded into the night, Sarah's destiny became entwined with the horrors that lurked within the mansion's walls. Part 3: The Masquerade. Sarah's heart pounded with trepidation as she followed the creature deeper into the labyrinthine corridors of the mansion. Each step she took felt like a descent into madness, her mind consumed by the darkness that surrounded her. Finally, they arrived at a grand chamber adorned with tattered curtains and crumbling statues. In the center of the room stood a grand mirror, its surface warped and distorted like a twisted reflection of reality. "Welcome to the masquerade, Sarah," the creature hissed, its voice echoing through the empty chamber. Sarah's eyes widened in horror as she took in the scene before her. Ghostly figures danced in the flickering candlelight, their faces hidden behind elaborate masks of porcelain and bone. Their laughter filled the air like a macabre symphony, sending chills down Sarah's spine. "What is this place?" Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible over the din of the masquerade. The creature grinned, its teeth gleaming in the dim light. "This is where your true desires shall be revealed," it replied. "But beware, for not all masks hide friendly faces." With a flick of its hand, the creature disappeared into the shadows, leaving Sarah alone amidst the swirling dancers. Fear clawed at her throat as she watched the masquerade unfold before her, her mind racing with uncertainty. Desperate to escape the madness that surrounded her, Sarah made her way through the crowd, her eyes darting nervously behind the masks of the other guests. But no matter where she turned, she found herself met with nothing but hollow stares and twisted grins. And then, amidst the chaos, Sarah saw him. A figure clad in darkness, his mask adorned with crimson feathers and shimmering jewels. His gaze locked with hers across the crowded room, sending a shiver down her spine. With a sense of dread, Sarah realized that this was no ordinary guest at the masquerade. This was something far more sinister, a specter of her darkest desires come to life. As the figure drew closer, Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. She knew she should flee, to escape this nightmare before it consumed her completely. But something held her in place, a morbid fascination with the darkness that lurked within the mansion's walls. And so, as the clock struck midnight and the masquerade reached its climax, Sarah found herself drawn into a dance of shadows and despair, her fate intertwined with the horrors that awaited her in the darkness. Part 4: The Unmasking. Sarah's pulse quickened as the masked figure drew nearer, his presence suffocating her with a mixture of fear and intrigue. She tried to tear her gaze away, to flee from the impending danger, but an invisible force held her captive in the swirling dance of the masquerade. With each step the figure took, the air grew colder, and Sarah felt the weight of his gaze bearing down upon her. She could sense the darkness that emanated from him, a darkness that threatened to consume her very soul. As he finally reached her side, the masked figure extended a gloved hand, his touch sending a jolt of electricity through Sarah's trembling frame. "My dear Sarah," he murmured, his voice a velvet whisper that caressed her senses. "I have been searching for you." Sarah's heart raced as she struggled to find her voice, to form the words to rebuff this ominous stranger. But before she could speak, the figure reached up and gently lifted his mask, revealing a face that sent chills down her spine. His features were twisted and grotesque, his eyes black as coal and filled with a hunger that made Sarah's blood run cold. She recoiled in horror, her mind reeling with disbelief at the sight before her. "You cannot hide from me, Sarah," the figure whispered, his voice a sinister melody that echoed through the chamber. "You called out to me, and now you are mine." With a flick of his wrist, the figure cast aside his mask, revealing the true horror that lurked beneath. His face contorted into a grotesque caricature of humanity, his flesh twisted and mottled with decay. Sarah's screams echoed through the empty chamber as she stumbled backward, her mind consumed by a primal terror unlike anything she had ever known. She tried to flee, to escape from the nightmare that had enveloped her, but the masked figure was everywhere, his presence looming over her like a specter of death. And then, just as Sarah thought she could bear no more, the chamber erupted into darkness, swallowing her whole in its suffocating embrace. As the shadows closed in around her, Sarah's world descended into madness, her screams lost amidst the chaos of the masquerade. Part 5: The Revelations. In the suffocating darkness, Sarah's mind raced with fear and confusion. She felt as though she were drowning in a sea of shadows, her senses overwhelmed by the oppressive weight of the unknown. But amidst the chaos, a faint glimmer of light pierced the darkness, beckoning her toward salvation. With trembling hands, Sarah reached out, her fingertips brushing against the cool surface of the mirror that stood before her. As her reflection materialized in the warped glass, Sarah recoiled in horror at the sight before her. Her features were twisted and contorted, her eyes hollow and empty, a mere shell of the woman she once was. But as she stared into her own reflection, Sarah began to see glimpses of memories long forgotten, fragments of a past that had been hidden from her consciousness. She saw herself as a child, playing in the sun-dappled meadows of her youth. She saw moments of joy and laughter, of love and companionship that had long since faded into obscurity. And then, amidst the haze of forgotten memories, Sarah saw him. The masked figure from the masquerade, his presence looming over her like a shadowy specter. But as she looked closer, she realized that he was more than just a figment of her imagination. He was a part of her, a darkness that had always existed within the depths of her soul. With a jolt of realization, Sarah understood the truth that had been hidden from her for so long. The mansion, the masquerade, the masked figure, they were all manifestations of her own desires and fears, twisted reflections of her innermost thoughts and emotions. But as the truth dawned upon her, Sarah knew that she could no longer deny the darkness that lurked within her. She had spent so long running from her past, from the pain and heartache that had defined her existence. But now, she understood that she could never truly escape from herself. With a newfound sense of resolve, Sarah turned away from the mirror, ready to face whatever horrors awaited her in the darkness. For she knew that only by confronting the demons of her past could she ever hope to find redemption. And so, with each step she took into the unknown, Sarah embraced the darkness that dwelled within her, knowing that it was only by confronting her own fears that she could ever hope to find the light. Part 6: The Confrontation. As Sarah delved deeper into the labyrinth of her own subconscious, she found herself engulfed by a swirling maelstrom of memories and emotions. Every step she took echoed with the weight of her past, each shadowy corner harboring secrets she had long sought to forget. But amidst the darkness, a faint glimmer of hope flickered like a lone candle in the night. With each memory unearthed, Sarah began to piece together the fragments of her shattered psyche, slowly unraveling the tangled web of her own inner turmoil. As she wandered through the twisted corridors of her mind, Sarah stumbled upon a forgotten chamber hidden deep within the recesses of her consciousness. The air was heavy with the scent of decay, the walls adorned with faded tapestries depicting scenes of love and loss. And there, at the center of the chamber, stood the masked figure, his presence casting a pall over the room like a shroud of darkness. But this time, Sarah felt no fear, no hesitation. For she knew that the time had come to confront the demons that had haunted her for so long. With steady resolve, Sarah approached the figure, her eyes locked with his in a silent challenge. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice echoing through the empty chamber. The masked figure regarded her with an inscrutable gaze, his features obscured by the shadows that danced across his face. "I am but a reflection of your own desires and fears," he replied, his voice a haunting whisper that reverberated through the room. Sarah felt a surge of anger rise within her, a fierce determination to break free from the shackles of her own self-imposed prison. "You cannot control me any longer," she declared, her voice ringing with conviction. "I am stronger than you realize." With a sudden burst of energy, Sarah reached out and tore the mask from the figure's face, revealing the true horror that lay beneath. But instead of recoiling in terror, she felt a sense of liberation wash over her, a newfound clarity that banished the darkness from her soul. For in that moment, Sarah realized that the masked figure was not her enemy, but a part of herself that she had long denied. And as she stared into the empty void of his eyes, she saw not a monster, but a reflection of her own inner turmoil. With a sense of acceptance, Sarah turned away from the figure, ready to embrace the light that awaited her on the other side. For she knew that true strength lay not in denying her past, but in confronting it head-on and emerging stronger and more resilient than ever before. And so, With her head held high and her heart filled with hope, Sarah stepped out of the chamber and into the light, ready to face whatever challenges the future may hold. Part 7. The Redemption. As Sarah emerged from the depths of her own subconscious, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders, a burden she had carried for far too long. The darkness that had once consumed her had been vanquished, replaced by a newfound sense of purpose and resolve. With each step she took, Sarah felt the warmth of the sunlight upon her skin, a welcome reprieve from the suffocating darkness that had plagued her for so long. And as she looked out upon the world with fresh eyes, she realized that she was no longer bound by the chains of her past. Gone were the haunted corridors of the mansion, the twisted specter of the masked figure. In their place stood a world filled with endless possibilities, a future waiting to be written by her own hand. With a sense of determination, Sarah set out to rebuild her life, to forge new connections and embrace the joys that had long eluded her. And though the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, she faced it with unwavering courage and resilience. For she knew that true redemption lay not in forgetting the past, but in using it as a stepping stone toward a brighter tomorrow. And as she walked into the unknown, Sarah carried with her the lessons she had learned, a beacon of hope in a world shrouded in darkness. And so, as the sun set on the horizon, Sarah looked to the future with a smile upon her lips, ready to embrace whatever adventures awaited her on the journey ahead. For she knew that no matter what trials may come, she would face them with strength and grace, a testament to the power of love, resilience, and the indomitable human spirit. And in that moment, Sarah knew that she was finally free. The end.